Hello team, this is Les Bennett, Learning and Development Manager with the Stewart Restaurant Group. When it comes to filtering on our Velocity fryers, we always hear the pump motor turn on. But in today's video, I want to talk about what happens when we go to filter and the motor does not turn on. Now in situations like that, we often think the motor has gone bad and it needs to be replaced. Now, while that may be the case, there's other things we can look at. In today's video, I want to talk about whether or not the motor actually overloaded and tripped. We'll talk about how to reset the motor. We'll also look at preventative measures we can take in the future to make sure it doesn't trip again. So to access the pump motor, the first thing we need to do is take out our condensation pan. This will give us access to the motor. Now that I have the condensation pan removed, I have access to the motor, and what I'm looking at is this red reset button here. Now, in order to reset it, I'm going to need some kind of blunt object. You can use the back end of a screwdriver, or in this case, I can use a Sharpie. The main thing being you don't want to use anything too sharp that can puncture the red button. Now, it's also very, very important to note that when we go to reset a motor, the motor has to cool down for at least 30 minutes. Sometimes you might even want to wait till the next morning. There's been situations where they go to reset it, it doesn't reset, but if you wait till the next morning, it will reset. So we have to make sure the motor's cooled down. In order to reset it, I'm just going to take a blunt object, and I'm going to push it against this reset button. Now you have to use quite a bit of force. You got to push kind of hard. And what will happen is, if the motor has tripped, it should click and reset. And if it reset at that point, you'd be able to use it. Now if it doesn't reset, again, make sure that the motor has cooled down. But if it doesn't reset, then we have to look at other things that could have possibly caused it to not work, whether it be our relay or whether it be the motor itself has gone out. All right, now if I reset the motor and it works, now I got to ask myself, why did it trip in the first place? So first thing I want to do is I want to listen to the motor now that it's working. Is it grinding at all? Does it sound like anything's going out in the motor? The motor itself could be going bad, which caused it to overload. But if the motor is fine, next things I want to look at is, how dirty is my filter pad? The filter could have just been excessively dirty. The motor could have been working extra hard, which caused it to trip. Now, the most common thing, though, I see is I start to look for the rings. Often what's going to happen is when I have a motor that's gone out, it's tripped, usually one of these rings is missing or it's kind of gone bad. And that will cause the motor to have to work extra hard, which could cause it to trip. Now, FYI, if you are in a situation where oil has been sitting in your fryer overnight while the motor cooled down, you reset it, that motor now cannot pump up this cold oil. It's going to have to work extra hard, which may cause it to trip again. So if you do have cold oil that's been sitting in your pan overnight and you just reset your motor, what you're going to want to do is manually take this oil, put it into your fryer, change out the pad, so that way you have a good filter paper to run your motor now. Now if you do these things, that should hopefully solve many of the issues you're having as far as motors tripping.